Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and keep watching more details. I'm so mad at Trudy's role in the 2025 One Chicago crossover after PD's blunder. The 2025 One Chicago crossover put Trudy Platt at the center of its storytelling, but I am mad at how she is utilized in light of Chicago PD's usage of the character. As one of the remaining original characters in the police procedural, Amy Morton's character has been through all of the franchise's specials since the tradition started. Technically, she is a part of the 21st Police District, but considering the shared reality, she has also appeared in several episodes of Chicago Med and Chicago Fire. Still, her primary stories have all gone down with Hank Voight's intelligence heavily involved. While I watch all installments of the One Chicago franchise, I have a soft spot for Chicago PD, primarily because I've always leaned towards police procedurals. Admittedly, I wasn't the biggest fan of Platt at first. I didn't like that she was being too hard on then patrol officers, Kevin Atwater and Kim Burgess. However, as One Chicago went on, I started to appreciate Platt for what she represents on TV. Unfortunately, Chicago PD Season 12 has failed her in more ways than one, and the 2025 One Chicago crossover makes it worse. Because the 2025 One Chicago crossover started with Chicago Fire, its events are kicked off with Firehouse 51 responding to a call downtown. Before it, however, the newly promoted Mouch McPolland was talking about some drama at home with Trudy. This sets up the pair's harrowing day, not only as first responders but also as a couple. I do like that they are at the center of the storytelling, but while Burgess and Adam Ruzick, as well as Stella Kidd and Kelly Severide, are subjected to a somewhat similar ordeal, Trudy and Mouch's plot is just better executed. That being said, I don't like that part of it that includes Trudy being rushed to the hospital as she fights for her life, not just because I don't want One Chicago to lose her, but because it's a disservice to her character. It's no secret that Chicago PD has sidelined the character for quite a while now. It started when it slowly phased out the patrol part of its storytelling. The 2025 One Chicago crossover could have been the opportunity to highlight how great Trudy is, but she spends the majority of it lying in the hospital. There are a couple of better ways that the 2025 One Chicago crossover could have used Trudy. Subjecting her to a near-death experience and having the good people at Gaffney Medical work on her while the rest of Intelligence and Firehouse 51 navigate the situation is such a waste. I would have rather seen her more active on the scene, especially since she supposedly has ties with the case's main culprit, Lauren Bates. NBC and One Chicago could have leaned more on their history, not just to give Mouch's wife something substantial to do, but also to save the event's villain twist from falling flat. We've seen how strong Trudy has been throughout her stint in One Chicago. The 2025 crossover could have been a great way to remind viewers of that. Instead of just always playing a supporting role in Hank's cases with Intelligence, we could have seen her play a pivotal part in figuring out the whole case with her great detective skills. Granted that Trudy's near-death experience had given Christian Stolt the chance to flex his acting muscles, but had One Chicago taken a different route, it could have also given Morton her time under the spotlight. While I am disappointed in how the 2025 One Chicago crossover used Trudy Platt, the good news is that Chicago PD Season 12 has the opportunity to make up for it. With a handful of episodes in the coming months, the police procedural has enough time to give her the time under the spotlight that she deserves. Perhaps she can be insistent about doing more at work after her near-death experience. While bringing back patrol officer-centric storylines would be the best way, I don't think it's in the cards for now. However, doing a Trudy-centric episode or giving her a meatier role in Intelligence's next cases would be a good start. At the very least, the 2025 One Chicago crossover should be a reminder to the franchise of how truly great she is as a character, and that it is wasting her. I have been a loyal One Chicago fan for years, through every high-stakes fire, intense police chase, and gripping hospital emergency. But after the 2025 One Chicago crossover, I have never been more furious. And it all comes down to Trudy Platt's role in the aftermath of Chicago PD's latest blunder. First off, let's talk about how Chicago PD completely botched their part of the crossover. I don't know what the writers were thinking, but somehow Voight and his team managed to make things worse at every turn. A suspect goes missing under their watch? Check. A bad call leads to an innocent civilian getting injured? Check. And worst of all, they drag Firehouse 51 and Med into the mess, forcing them to clean up PD's mistakes while acting like their hands are tied. And then there's Trudy Platt. Oh, Trudy. I usually love her, but this time, I'm fuming. Throughout the crossover, I kept waiting for Trudy to have that moment. You know, the one where she steps in, sets the record straight, and gives Voight that withering glare that says, "Fix this before I do." But what did we get instead? A watered-down, background version of Platt, who seemed more interested in playing damage control than actually holding anyone accountable. Trudy has always been the one who sees through the nonsense. She's the backbone of the PD team, the voice of reason when the unit goes too far. And yet, when the biggest blunder in crossover history unfolds, she barely raises an eyebrow. Instead of checking Voight, she's helping him smooth things over with Fire and Med. I don't buy it. Not for a second. Let's break down exactly how this disaster played out. Chicago PD was leading the charge in a high-stakes manhunt, tracking down a criminal whose actions were putting the entire city at risk. Sounds simple enough, right? Wrong. Because in true PD fashion, they went full force, made reckless decisions, and ended up causing a multi-car pileup that sent multiple victims to Med. Even worse, Firehouse 51 had to work overtime to extract civilians from burning vehicles. And the suspect? They got away. That alone was enough to make my blood boil. But then came the aftermath, the moment where I expected Trudy to storm into the district, slam a file down on Voight's desk, and demand answers. Instead, we got her making excuses for intelligence, telling Chief Bowden that it was a complicated situation, and reassuring Goodwin that Med would be reimbursed for the chaos caused by PD's negligence. Since when is Trudy the cleanup crew for Voight's screw-ups? Since when does she coddle intelligence instead of calling them out? She had a chance to be the voice of reason, the one who tells it like it is, the one who reminds everyone that being the police means being accountable, and she didn't take it. Worse still, when Mouch was caught in the crossfire, because of course this disaster had to put one of our Firehouse 51 favorites in danger, Trudy barely reacted. Sure, she checked in on him at Med, but where was the outrage? Where was the fiery, no-nonsense Platt we all know and love? If Voight's reckless operation had left her husband fighting for his life, I expected her to let loose, to demand consequences, to tear into anyone who tried to justify what happened. Instead, we got a subdued, almost apologetic Trudy, nodding along as Voight spewed one of his classic, "We did what we had to do" speeches. I sat there, jaw clenched, waiting for her to explode, but she didn't. And that's when I knew the writers had done her dirty. This was supposed to be a moment where Trudy reminded everyone why she's one of the best characters in the One Chicago universe. Instead, they reduced her to a mere shadow of herself, a bystander to the chaos rather than the force we all know she can be. And let's talk about that final scene, because if I wasn't mad enough, that just sealed it. After everything, after Med and Fire were left picking up the pieces of PD's blunder, we get a quiet moment between Trudy and Voight where she tells him, "Just be careful next time."